our chief White House correspondent, Kellie Meyer, who's been keeping a close eye on the president's reaction to this. Kellie, I'm sorry that you have to stay up late. I didn't expect that you're going to be on a crime show, but here we are talking about a different kind of crime. Tell me what you can about the White House reaction, what the president did when he got back. Lay it all out.
Yeah, so we've been monitoring the president's movements as he was in New York City today, finishing up his events with the United Nations General Assembly. And he hosted a reception tonight at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And one of the attendees there was Mayor Eric Adams. And that was from what we get these notes from reporters that are following along with the president's movements. That was from a note from around 6 p.m. Eastern, so ahead of this news. And then we know that the president just returned a short time ago to the White House. As you see there, he landed, and normally there's an opportunity for the press to ask questions. I'm right now in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, following Vice President Harris on the campaign trail. But we know he did stop for questions. He answered a question regarding the ceasefire in the Middle East. He was asked about New York Mayor Eric Adams' indictment as he walked away. It's unclear whether he heard the question, but he did not answer reporter shouted questions there, Ashleigh.
Has this been a sort of an abrasive topic in your coverage at the White House? I mean, obviously, during an election, we are within 50 days of people going to the polls. Some people are voting already. Having a very prominent Democratic mayor of the nation's largest city, closely allied with the Democratic governor of New York State, and obviously an ally as well of this White House, this is not something that they would want to hear or they would want to have happened.
Well, it's interesting, Ashleigh, because I have sources within the mayor's office because of a visit that he was set to have when President Biden gathered some of the mayors, remember, in June or July, as he was going through that dilemma over whether or not to drop out of the race. And he was talking with local governors and mayors and things like that. So I had some contacts in my phone, and that's how we got the statement from the mayor's office, from the mayor, in regard to this, because of their association with the White House in past months. But we know that I also reached out to both the White House tonight and the Harris campaign and have yet to hear back from either of them. So we know that otherwise it's pretty silent from the White House tonight, and also silent from the president as he walked back into his residence there tonight.
You know, I should really walk back something I said earlier on the show, and I want to get your feeling on it, and that is that the president would more than likely have known about this, when he was landing on the lawn at the White House, and when Marine One was sweeping along and he wasn't answering the questions and maybe didn't hear them, he would have had full knowledge that this indictment was dropping. But I don't know that I should say he would have had full knowledge before it was a press release, because the DOJ and that branch of government, the White House, not supposed to be talking. Do you have any sort of intelligence on what that process would be like and how the White House and the president would be informed of something this seismic?
It's a good question, and I think it's exactly like you said. Maybe he found out as the rest of America did, and then as he was on Marine One returning to the South Lawn. So maybe he did know about this, but unlikely, of course, that he knew about it prior to that. And it's also true that the White House really does remain out of these kind of discussions, anything that has to do with the Department of Justice, as we were asking questions, in regard to his son Hunter or with former President Trump investigations or anything like that. They really, even in the White House press briefings with Karine Jean-Pierre, would refer us to the Department of Justice. So they would likely decline to comment either way, but it is more likely that he also heard of it as we all were, and was likely briefed or potentially mentioned about it as he was returning. But of course, there is so much else he was working on in regards to the ceasefire and things happening with Israel and Lebanon. So a lot as he was learning this coming back to the White House tonight.
Yeah. And this is politics in an election year, and so whether they knew or not, they would be prepared for it, given the fact that this, it's been ramping up, and it was almost expected. So, Kellie Meyer, you are so great for jumping on with us, especially in the middle of covering something completely different. Kellie Meyer, our White House correspondent, helping us sort of navigate what the president knew and knows, and when he knew and might have known it.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.